Good morning, everyone. It's Janice Baylor from Fleurs. I'd like to welcome you back into my studio today to finish up the Geometry Dash quilt using the Heather Ross fabrics. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone that's become a subscriber in the past month. Over the holiday break. I super appreciate it. I'm sorry that I've been a little inattentive. I kind of was, just enjoying my holiday with friends and family and taking it easy, but I'm ready to kick it off in the new year, and certainly all of your enthusiasm is really giving me a lot more energy to jump back in and come up with so many more ideas to share moving forward in the new year. So today we are going to sort of talk about finishing up with this project and then a little bit of plans of what we are going to do in the next few weeks and moving forward. So thank you all so much, and stay tuned. All of that is coming right up.
Okay, just to quickly recap, I have pieced everything now and cut everything, selected all my fabrics. Those are parts 1 through 3, which you can find by going back in the Geometry Dash Quilt With Me playlist. Then I'm just ironing everything out. I love when you flip them open and you get to see all that work. I'm trimming that up, which I went over in part 3 and is also obviously included in the directions instructions that I'll link for purchase down below. Now I have all my blocks and we're ready to go.
Okay, so to get started today, I want to just quickly go over what I have left from the project before we jump into putting it all together and assembling our final quilt top. So I have all of my blocks. They are assembled. I've pieced everything, I've pressed everything, I've trimmed everything. All of that is in the part 3 video. If you missed anything, go back and check that out. And then I have them sorted by the center feature fabric. So they're all in order there with their center features, and I think that's how I'm going to go ahead and try to lay them out. So going across in a row, focusing on that central feature fabric, and then going down and spreading those out. But we'll see when we get to the assembly. So I have them all in this tray here, and the next part of the video will be laying everything out, and I'll kind of put you on the overhead and possibly fast forward and talk through that in a voiceover. But before we get started with that, I just want to share what I have left. So from the original Tiger Lily bundle, I didn't use either of these little kitten fabrics here in the pink or the white. I didn't use the kittens on the graph pages, and I didn't use the ballerinas. Perhaps these will be great for projects in the future. I'm not sure. I just didn't think they were right for this particular project. I wanted to have it be a little bit less juvenile. I already had enough feature fabrics, and I felt like these didn't work for anything that I had left. I do have my backing fabric ready to go. I believe I got a big wide back piece, but I'm not sure if I got enough yardage because, that would require planning, and sometimes I'm just not that great at that whenever I go to the quilt shop. But we'll see when we get there. But I plan to use this nice dark green that I think looks really good with some of the other dark greens that I chose for the quilt blocks. And I also think it will be a nice contrast to the cream dot going around all of the edges. So I plan to use that. If I need to, I have some of this beautiful like peach ombre that I think would be also a really nice complement to the back, or I could also use that possibly for the border. So we'll see. That's my intent with those, but they're ready to go. Of course, the suggestions for backing are all included in the pattern, which is linked below, and in all the previous parts to the Geometry Dash quilt. Then from all of my fabrics that I cut into, this is what I have left. I didn't end up using everything that I pulled, like this Lotta Yansdottir. I didn't end up using this little dot. I always pull more than I need just because I'm never really sure when I'm cutting into stuff, what is going to kind of seem like it works or not. Sometimes I need to trim it out like a row and see if it's really representing what I thought would be happening. So give yourself a little flexibility. That's my recommendation when you're pulling fabrics, because you want to be able to change your mind if you're putting something together. Always have one or two things that could be a backup, or that you could add in if you didn't calculate correctly, or your piece is a little bit shorter than what you remembered it being, so that you're not stuck. So I didn't use this dot, but all of those are definitely fabrics that I would use in the future, so I'm not really worried about that. Oh, I also didn't use this large daisy print because I already had enough feature fabrics, and then I thought when I cut that up you wouldn't be able to tell what it was. So, but I did use mostly everything else. I still have lots of little pieces left over from that. Some are much smaller than others, but I think what I will do is share with you several projects that are like no waste. So instead of putting things back in our bins, unless it's a large piece like the unicorns, this I still have like maybe close to a half yard or something left of this, so I wouldn't consider this to be a scrap. I definitely have enough to do another large project, so I will put that straight back on my shelf, my stash shelf, and use that in the future. And as well as like a few of the other prints that I didn't really use that much of, I could use those for something else. Oh, I didn't use these. See, I didn't even use these either. Anyway, I need to sort through this a little bit better, but you see what I'm saying? Like, I still have a rather large piece of this to market from Cloud9. I can still use for a lot of other things, so I'll just put that straight back on the shelf. But some of the pieces that I have, that I only have this strip left of the butterflies now. It's great. I'm really happy to use it up. But I would not put this on my shelf, so it'll go straight into my little colored bins. I sort my scraps by color. A lot of people do that, I know. Other than that, they're not very organized. That's a project I hope to work on moving forward in the new year, and I'll share that with you. But I might share a pattern on how to use up some of these larger scraps. One of my favorite ways to do that is to make a patchwork minking blanket, which I also have a series on that in my channel. Not only do I cut them into regular size squares, but sometimes I do ones that are even more irregular, so I can use up even these pieces that aren't the standard size that I typically cut for that, and I still really like them. It's very basic, simple patchwork, and I find that that's a wonderful way to use things up, and they make great gifts. They're been perennially one of my best sellers, so if you haven't already, you can go check that out, and I will link that down below as well. Another project I think we're going to work on with the little strip scraps that we have left is putting them all together, just kind of randomly, into larger strips, and then making some quilted tote bags. I think that is an excellent way to use some of the strips up and to keep them out of our scrap bins. Let's try to focus on zero waste sewing in the future. Like, I don't want to be throwing things away. I paid money for this fabric. It's gorgeous. It should live on in as many iterations as I possibly can think of, and I plan to share that with you moving forward. So to make those, I just put all of the little extra strips that I had from my 2-inch pieces that we cut for the blocks into a little bin here, and then I'm pulling from this and working from it. My only rule is just to try to not have the same color next to each other, right? So I don't want a pink with a pink or a green next to a green. I'm also trying to keep it light and opened by making sure that I focus on some of my more neutral fabrics as well. So you can see an example of a strip there. I've got this other one here, and so on and so forth. So that will be a project that is up and coming in the next week following this assembly video. I'm not going to show how to finish quilting, how to bind, how to back it, and all that stuff. It's pretty standard for any quilt. You can quilt it however you want. All of that suggestion of how to finish it is in the pattern, but just for the purpose of the video, I'm not going to show that since it's a pretty standard process. Anyway, so that is what we're going to work on today, putting all of these blocks together into rows and assembling that, and I'll share a few of my design tips and tricks on that coming up. So here we go.
So I start with my feature fabric. In this case, it is Chloe on the unicorn, and I generally plan for that to be about the middle. So here I am working with 7 different fabrics, so there isn't a exact center row, so I will put it slightly above center, so that would be my 3rd row down from the top, so there'll be 4 rows below it, so about in the center. Then I am using one of my bolder floral medallion prints right underneath of that. I have 3 of those different floral medallion prints, so my plan is to make those approximately every other row. Then I have the girls in the trees, the pink version. I'm going underneath of there with that one, and then I am ending with the dark brown floral medallion, which I feel grounds the bottom of the quilt. Some of it is just personal preference, how you space them out. I generally put heavier colors on the bottom because, like I said, I feel like they ground it, and a little bit lighter toward the top. But I'm also paying attention as I work across to spreading the different colors out. So here I do have a darker row at the top with the girls in green in the forest playing. And I do like that because it spreads out the very dark brown at the bottom with this darker layer in the middle top. And also I have the unicorns as my very top row, and that's another one of my features, and that's often how I'll space that out. So I'll have my main feature in the dead center, and then I'll have another feature at the top that kind of sets the tone for the quilt going down. That's just what works for my brain. You can obviously arrange things any way you want. Here's me just, fiddling around. I'm trying to space out the colors as evenly as I possibly can and not have too many things touching. Some things are going to have to touch and overlap and be grouped together because I only have so many fabrics to work with, but I'm just kind of generally trying to spread them out. Something else that happens that helps with that is to take a black and white picture to help you see if you have things spread out. Now I am using little marker pins to mark my rows so I don't forget which order they go in. And I'm going to sew them all together, picking them up from left to right, simply like you read a book. And then I'm putting right sides together. I'm lining them up against that right side seam, and that's where I'm going to start to sew them with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going down here, and that's all that you need to do is just putting them together from left to right. And I don't pin at this stage simply because it's just a square on top of a square. I don't find that hard to line up. But as I start to connect the rows, then I will be pinning them. So I'm just working through that, lining each one up. And then I like to chain piece. So I put one through, and then I put the next group together, and then I put the next group together, and then I cut them apart and I start working, putting them together to complete the rows. So that's pretty straightforward. And the little marker helps me know which row is which and also which are the first blocks in my row so I don't get out of order. And then once I've completed putting an entire row together, I take it back over to my floor and lay it back out so I can stay in order. And here I am just marking, and then I'm flipping them together. You can see that I stack them on top of each other, and then I'm going to put that row together. And you simply work your way down the quilt. If you have a design wall, then you don't have to crouch over as much as me, but I like spreading things out on the floor. And then once I have all of the rows, I'm going to start combining rows together. So you can see a little bit where we're at there. And then I flip the A row down on top of the B row, and I'm going to sew those together. At this stage, I do like to pin at where the blocks meet their intersections. So I simply just have pressed all of those seams open, and then I line up that where the seams meet. And I'd like to put my pins far enough back that they hold it really close to the top, but that I don't have to necessarily be super careful about pulling them all out as I sew. I just find that works quicker for me, but you can do you. So then I'm just gonna sew row to row, and that's how you do a quilt. So just, if you want to, you can also pin in the center of the blocks where the block, all of the logs meet. It's really up to you how much you pin. That's just a personal preference. And I do like to press my seams open after I assemble the blocks. And then I lay those back out on the floor and I just work my way down until I get larger and larger pieces put together. Here I am just pinning on the floor while they're already all spread out. And I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, of course, just kind of being careful to match that all up. And I do back stitch at the beginning and the end of my rows when I'm putting the top together, just because it gets heavy and they start to pull open those seams. Then I take all those pins out and I'm almost done. At the end, I press everything opened, and here we have the grand reveal. It's our Geometry Dash quilt. I love it. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I'm so happy to have used the Heather Ross fabrics to complete a project. They're gorgeous. And I really like how the Swiss dot kind of calms it all down for me. I was really surprised by that. You can still see some of the little creases from where I creased my triangles. And here are a few close-ups of it all assembled. I love the Chloe feature fabric so much. I'm really happy that I got to work with this. And thank you so much for joining me. Again, you can find the pattern at laruedefleurs.etsy.com, and that will be linked below. If you do make a quilt, the Geometry Dash, please tag me on Instagram. I'm at laruedefleurs, and it's the Geometry Dash quilt hashtag. I would love to start seeing them popping up. And I thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that you enjoy making your own quilt. Subscribe and like and hit the notification bell so we can make more projects together.